Thank you guys for joining us today in the first ever Muslim Bitcoin Summit and the first ever live audience podcast for me, the Ansari Podcast. It's an absolute honor to be here with you guys with our special guest, Abdullah Ibn Oda, Muslim Bitcoiner on Twitter,
Mhm.
and the founder of Bitcoin Majlis. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for joining us today, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I think we all here agree that we need to find an alternative method for Muslim finance. The financial systems and institutions globally have been a means of oppressing and demonizing and controlling the Muslim world and Muslim individuals, even the most powerful ones. But I am one of those people. What's great about this is I'm actually pretty old fashioned, and I still think that we should go back to the gold standard. And you and others believe that it should be Bitcoin. So tell me why we should go to a Bitcoin standard rather than going back to a proven method of halal Muslim finance.
Yeah. So like I was talking about this morning, I mean, this is something that we get asked a lot because, a lot, like I said, a lot of people agree about the problem, and Abdullah, we need to go back to Sunnah money. This is the money that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used. This is the money that we've been using for thousands and thousands of years. Like, we need to go back to the gold standard. And to that answer, like just like I talked about this morning, if any of you guys were here for the talk, is that we've tried this before many times. There have been Muslims that are more politically connected, well connected, more politically powerful than like all of us here in this room, and they've tried to bring back the gold standard, namely, like just to go over that again. I mean, the Morabitun were, this movement that started in the 80s and the 90s, spearheaded by Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi, and they were doing, trying to revive the gold standard through like as basically through reviving the caliphate. That was like their mission, is that they saw that the problems of the Muslim ummah were only going to be solved by bringing back the caliphate, and the only way that was going to happen was that you had to get out of the current riba-based fiat system. So they tried to implement one of the movements that came out of the Morabitun is called the gold dinar movement. You guys should Google it. It's like really fascinating. I've spent like hours just like researching the gold dinar movement because there's so many parallels of like what we're trying to do here with what they already tried to do in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and they even tried to do their own gold dinar, like cash, like electronic cash. And if you go on the like e-dinar website, it's just basically like a dead website. Like, the project has been abandoned because, as Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi wrote on his blog in 2014, he mentioned that like I wish I had the direct quote here. It's a really, really powerful quote. But he was saying basically like the like capitalism has won. There's no way that we're going to revive the gold standard because every part of the banking infrastructure is controlled by Zionists, and it's controlled. It's all just based on riba. So the only way you were going to be able to bring back a gold standard is you had to have banks that facilitate the transactions, especially across borders. And he understood that. So he said, look, this gold dinar movement is not going to work, and I disassociate myself from the movement. And then like a few years later, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi passed away. And it doesn't seem like the gold dinar movement is just kind of like it's basically a meme at this point. It's a really a good case study to explain Bitcoin to people. So and there's many other cases we can go over, but that one kind of like sticks out in my mind because it's like, why don't we go back to the gold standard? And I'm like, we've tried. We had like, it was a very successful movement at one point, and there's just like nothing came of it.
So the argument that we've tried and it hasn't worked isn't necessarily convincing. The argument has to be, why is Bitcoin a better alternative? And how can we build infrastructures that are not going to be attacked and Zionist proof? If that's your argument, then why can't we just, why don't we invest our money in starting a bank?
So there's actually a lot of different answers to that because um, if we try, like, I think it's good to understand why those attempts at bringing back the gold standard have failed, And it's basically because you can't transact in the gold metal itself. So ultimately, you have to rely on a bank. And the thing is, if you have to ultimately rely on a bank by default, they're already plugged in into the current fiat system that operates on fractional reserve banking. So like I was talking about this morning, if you want to actually start up a bank, even if it's gold backed or if it's like fully reserved or whatever, you can't do that because it goes against like it. You're trying to do something that the fiat system does not allow you to do. So you can't like you can try to set up a bank that's like that has like gold reserves, and you have like different banks that are interacting and settling gold with each other. But ultimately, I mean, this is something that like Satoshi Nakamoto talked about. It's like the problem with the current monetary system is all the trust that's required to make it work. So you have to trust these centralized institutions that they're not going to fraction reserve their gold. You have to trust them that they're not going to be like controlling or shutting down any bank accounts. You have to trust them to make sure that like they're actually backing up their reserves, or they say they're the reserves that they say that they have, they actually have it. And there's not really like people that want to go back to bringing back the gold standard don't really understand why the gold standard failed or why we have fiat money. The reason why we have fiat money, essentially, if you look back at the root, was because of the deficiencies in the gold standard, necessarily because we live in a globalized society where we do transactions across borders all the time with fiat money. You can't make that work with gold. And if you try to make that work with gold, it may work temporarily, but at the end of the day, it's all just going to devolve into the fiat currency system that we have today.
But didn't it not work with gold because gold is limited? So Bitcoin is limited as well. So how would Bitcoin operate in a globalized system?
So that's a good question. So the advantage that Bitcoin has is that it's digital, it's portable. So right now, like when I send, my family back in Palestine, I send them Bitcoin whenever I want to send them funds. Like I don't use Western Union or whatever. And if I were to try to send them gold, I mean, that would be an impossible task. So the advantage that Bitcoin has is that you can send it across borders and you can do it permissionlessly. There's no bank that you have to ask permission from. When I send my money to someone else, when I send my Bitcoin to someone else that has their own wallet, I send it to them peer to peer without any intermediaries, and they get that Bitcoin. And there's nothing the banking system, there's nothing that any government, the US government or any other big institution can stop you from doing it. You send the transaction, the receiver gets it, and that's it. Khalas. Like there's nothing that any institution can do. And there's also the advantage is that Bitcoin is absolutely scarce. So it's limited in 21 million Bitcoin, and you can verify that yourself. You can run, like I said earlier this morning, you can run a Bitcoin node and you can verify that supply, and you can verify all the transactions that come through. And if anyone's trying to cheat the system, guess what? My node is going to reject it, and thousands of other nodes are going to reject it as well. Like people have tried to break Bitcoin in very creative ways. People have tried to change Bitcoin in very creative ways, and they have all failed miserably and spectacularly. And there's a reason for that. You should go and study why these attempts to change Bitcoin have utterly failed. And it's because of the decentralized nature of Bitcoin, where you have people that are running Bitcoin nodes all across the world that are verifying the supply, that are verifying the transactions, and Bitcoin is operating in a permissionless, uncensorable way that absolutely no one can stop.
So this Bitcoin that you sent to your family in Palestine, how do they then use this Bitcoin? Are they able to buy groceries with it? Are they able to use it in any actual means in their life?
So right now, I guess the economy or any kind of circular economy around Bitcoin is very limited because it's still a very actually it's the monetary system for Bitcoin hasn't been around for that long when you compare it to fiat, and especially when you compare it to gold. So of course you're not going to be able to buy groceries immediately, but when I send it to my family in Palestine as an example, they save some of it. I try to convince them to save, like they should try to accumulate savings and think about the long term, think about their kids and grandkids as they're saving. But also, like if they need to spend any Bitcoin for their stuff, like what they do is that they sometimes will convert it into a stable coin that's like dollar backed, or they will convert it to the local shekel. And it's very trivial actually to do, even in a place like Palestine, as long as you know someone that wants to sell you, or that wants to accept Bitcoin, they will give you the fiat money that you need. So right now, it's just that Bitcoin is its very early stages. And right now, you're not able to buy things like groceries in pretty much almost everywhere. But Bitcoin has the infrastructure for things like for circular economies to develop. I mean, one of the things that we do for Bitcoin Majlis that we talked about earlier is that we raise.
Can you explain to me real quick what's
Yeah.
a circular economy? What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
very good question. So, like a circular economy would just be like a group of people that transact in a certain monetary system. So, like, if we had a circular economy of this room, we would all be transacting in the same money. We would all be producing goods and services and building capital and circulating it amongst ourselves so that we're not like relying on outside resources or outside outside influence. So like there have been examples and case studies within the Bitcoin space, like in El Salvador, and actually surprisingly, there are some places in Africa where they use Bitcoin like day to day, like for transactions. Like one of the projects that we work on at Bitcoin Majlis is that we raise Bitcoin and we pay our zakat in Bitcoin to this orphanage all the way out in Uganda. And like, there's about like 70, 80 kids or so right now. And, they receive payment in Bitcoin, but not only that, they actually buy their stuff with Bitcoin. There are people in Uganda, like they even, I'm in contact with the brother Isma, who manages the orphanage there. He sent me one of the receipts and he's like, yeah, thank you so much for all the zakat you guys have sent over the last Ramadan. We were able to like expand our orphanage, and he showed us like the receipt that has like as proof that like, hey, we bought these bricks, we bought all of these materials, and it says like paid in Bitcoin. So like even in a place like Uganda, where we send Bitcoin to them in this orphanage, they don't even have internet access mostly, and they receive Bitcoin. Like they can still do it. You don't need an internet access even to receive Bitcoin payments. Like that's just like so mind blowing to me, because yes, right now like there's not really any there's not really any circular economies that have kind of developed. There have been a few here and there, pockets here and there, but the infrastructure is there. Like it's possible to do this. All you need is just a case study of like, imagine some Palestinians in like, in a city like Nablus or something that want to like, do like a small circular economy where they're all like transacting with goods and services and paying and receiving Bitcoin. Like what could like that would be extremely powerful, where they're not using the shekel currency that Israel issues. I mean, I think that has a really, really powerful potential to transform the ummah.
Okay, so I'm very ignorant about Bitcoin. I have a best friend that's like all he does it full time. But when you say that they're purchasing their bricks and their materials with Bitcoin, what does that mean? Like, are you telling me that they're going to a developer or a construction company and giving them Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, in the case for orphans of Uganda, like we just learned about this like actually last week, and I was like very shocked. But if you think about it for a second, I mean, they live in Uganda, which is like they live under one of like the most insanely like hyperinflationary currencies. So to tell a Ugandan that like, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin instead of the Ugandan shilling? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Like they have absolutely no faith in their fiat currency, to the point that like if you were just to suggest that you want to pay in Bitcoin, like you would be surprised that a lot of people that live in third world countries would, as long as they have like a smartphone and that they have like, they have access to internet, it's very easy to get access to Bitcoin and just transact with Bitcoin, as opposed to like, using a hyperinflationary fiat currency where like it loses its value so fast. I mean, I like to keep up with different fiat currencies, even especially in Muslim countries, and you just see it like, just look at it like for the price of like the past year, and you just see like a downward trend, and you're just like, wow, like these people like living in this Muslim country or whatever, like in Turkey, you see their fiat currency devalue by like 50% in like a year or something. You're like, wow, like people just normally just live like that, like as if there's just like they're just okay with living like that. But explaining it to people that live in these hyperinflationary regimes, it's very easy to convince them that like, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin, and they'd be more than open to actually accept payment and even pay for stuff in Bitcoin as well.
Well, if someone's living in a more stable country with a stable currency, can't you make that argument for Bitcoin that Bitcoin is volatile?
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I think one of the one of the things we've all been saying is that, the volatility aspect of Bitcoin is just a necessary price that you have to pay to get in if you're serious about Bitcoin. And that's only because, again, like I've said this morning, Bitcoin is monetizing from zero. So naturally it's going to be very volatile. I mean, if you think about Bitcoin's use case as a new money, and it's competing with the current fiat monetary system that is like something around the like 300 and something $1 trillion, like that's how much like the actual like global economy is around like $300 trillion or something, like some big insane number. If you're going to go up against that, there's going to be some volatility, I guarantee it. Like even if you tried to programmatically make it not volatile, the volatility is going to manifest somewhere. So like that's
Does it ever end though?
yeah.
At some point, does it become a stable currency?
That's a very good question. So this is like thinking about what a hypothetical Bitcoin standard would be. And if we're all using Bitcoin, which is a fixed supply asset, where people are actually saving rather than spending and consuming like as soon as they get their paycheck. So I think what would happen under such a regime, actually, you would have the price of goods and services would fall naturally. Think about like, we all like buy phones and laptops. Notice that like laptops and phones get cheaper and cheaper over time, and they get better performance every for each new model that comes out. It's talking to like the standard economists. If you tell them that like the prices are going to fall, they would immediately panic. Oh no, that's going to cause a depression and it's just going to be total chaos. And yet we buy products, goods, and services, especially like electronics, that fall in price every time, that get better and better. And we're able to get like more hardware space as an example. The prices of that keep falling and falling, and we get better and better products. I imagine under a Bitcoin standard where the prices of things are falling and falling because people are saving and people are thinking of the future, you would naturally get better and better products. You would get better and better capital accumulation, and you would get even just think about how this transforms zakat. One of the things I wanted to mention this morning I didn't get to mention is that like since I started Bitcoin, I swear, like wallahi, in the last 2 years, I have paid more zakat than I have did ever in my life. That's insane to me. Like because of the saving that I am doing in Bitcoin, which naturally appreciates in value, and it naturally the price of Bitcoin naturally increases. What that necessarily means is that the zakat that you pay is going to be increased as well. Like that's so mind blowing to me. If you're on a fixed supply monetary standard where you're saving in this thing and it's increasing in value and you're gaining more and more purchasing power, necessarily that means you're going to be paying more and more zakats. So like I just like noticed this thing within the last year. I was like, oh my God, I've paid so much zakat because I have just been stacking and saving Bitcoin. And if you think about that from a positive aspect, if all Muslims were to like get in that mindset of actually accumulating and stacking Bitcoin, like that would completely revolutionize the institution of zakat.
So with products and services though, is it in the favor of people with products and services for Bitcoin to increase in monetary value? Because if you're paying me, if I give you a water bottle for $5 and tomorrow that $5 should have been 10. I mean, why me as a business owner would I want to transact in Bitcoin if tomorrow the Bitcoin that I got, I'm not sure if it's less or fewer.
No, you hit on a very good point because the argument that's made is that, well, if Bitcoin is going to appreciate in value, why spend it? Like you would never spend it, right? You would just keep saving, saving, saving. But eventually, like you actually have to spend your Bitcoin. Like for example, the water. You're not gonna not spend your Bitcoin on water. You're gonna want some water because you're gonna die without it. Same goes for food. Same goes for clothing. Same goes for housing. But maybe you might not get the new iPhone that's coming out this year. Maybe you might be like, oh wait, actually, I'd rather save Bitcoin than buy the new iPhone. Instead of like, making one of those impulse buys that you make at Costco where you see like a really good deal on a new vacuum cleaner, you might be like, oh, well, actually, I probably don't need that. I'd rather stack the sats or I'd rather accumulate the Bitcoin than do that.
So is there a future for Bitcoin where you don't have to transact or turn it into a dollar or a euro or any other currency where you're strictly transacting with Bitcoin?
I mean, inshallah, that's the future. And if you look, one of the reasons why at the very beginning of my talk this morning, as I went about the history of money, is that the very common theme that you see about the history of money is that money converges to one. That's not an accident. Like whenever the iterative process of humanity trying to find the most saleable good or the most saleable commodity that ends up being a money necessarily means that you're going to converge on one money. For me personally, I see that there's going to be an interim period where you're going to have fiat existing alongside Bitcoin, and you're going to have like a bunch of different financial shenanigans that will allow you to convert from fiat to Bitcoin depending on which jurisdiction that you live in. But I feel like over the long term, if fiat keeps debasing and Bitcoin keeps accumulating in value and more infrastructure is built on Bitcoin and the fiat monetary system keeps deteriorating more and more, people are naturally going to want to accumulate Bitcoin. It's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
So when you say more infrastructure is built off Bitcoin, you mean more companies are using it to build their, or to even pay their employees, or to build their buildings, their brick and mortar buildings. That's what you mean by infrastructure.
Yes, but also more specifically, Bitcoin itself, like the Bitcoin blockchain itself, is not gonna handle like 2 billion people using it, because the nature of it's very good to look at Bitcoin as a settlement network, right? So like think about countries, how they settle or how banks settle with each other. Banks aren't constantly making transactions with each other. What they do is that they like make little transactions here, like with customers and other institutions. And at the end of the day, they like settle with all of each other. It's a settlement network. Bitcoin operates in that same way, in that it's a hard money settlement network. So that when you transact, like say if you're going to send $100 million worth of Bitcoin and two countries are going to settle like some transaction, that transaction cannot be reversed. This is a concept called settlement assurance, and this is the thing that Bitcoin itself gives you. The reason why I'm talking about this in regards to infrastructure is that more layers have to be built on top of Bitcoin to use it for things like buying your groceries, or maybe building an app for zakat, maybe building an app for doing like halal microloans or whatever you come up with. For one example of infrastructure that's built on Bitcoin is called the Lightning Network, which we've talked about earlier today, and we'll do a demonstration of that later today. Basically, the Lightning Network allows you to do payments, small payments of Bitcoin that don't use a lot of fees, that where you don't have to wait for 10 minutes for the next block to settle. So that way you're kind of, think of it as like this is like one non-Muslim this is like one haram example, but like, a lot of people use the example of a bar tab. So like if you're going out drinking or whatever, instead of actually paying for each individual drink, what you do is you have a bar tab open and then you settle that bar tab at the end of the day. So that the Lightning Network operates is a good analogy for how the Lightning Network operates, in that you have a open tab that where you can just do small little transactions. And this is how I send transactions to like that orphanage in Uganda, for example. Like right now, I can send like 2 pennies of Bitcoin to this orphanage all the way out in Uganda, which I can't even do with fiat. Like that's just so amazing to me. Like I can send. We'll do a demonstration later today, inshallah. But the Lightning Network allows for very small micro payments, and there's even going to be a demonstration later of another alternative social media platform where they use things called zaps, where you see a meme that you like, and instead of like retweeting it, you can zap them. You send them sats, which a sat, I guess I forgot to mention, is just one unit of a Bitcoin. So that's each Bitcoin is divided into 100 million units called sats. So if I'm sending someone some sats, I'm sending them like pennies worth of Bitcoin. And instead of like, retweeting or upvoting something, you send them zaps. Like someone could like make a post saying like, hey, I need like, people have demonstrated this. Like, hey, I need someone, I need a bunch of people to send me some sats because I want to buy a coffee. And people just send the post a bunch of zaps. The person gets it in their wallet and they're like in El Salvador and they like buy the coffee with the zaps that they got from the social media platform. So like there's just, by infrastructure, there's just so much that can be built on Bitcoin, not in terms of like businesses accepting it as payments, but also for infrastructure that allows for other like financial markets to occur on the Bitcoin network.
One of the things that attracts me to finding an alternative means of financial systems and banking for the Muslim world is that we would be in control of it to ensure that it is halal, that there's no riba. Let's say that Bitcoin Majlis gets its way, that the Bitcoin Muslim movement succeeds, is there a way for Muslims to be in control or have majority say in the direction of Bitcoin, if that's even a possibility?
Yeah, I mean that's actually a really good question, because the way Bitcoin operates is that many people have tried to influence the Bitcoin network and tried to make changes, like tried to institute their or try to implement their vision of like how Bitcoin should change, or how Bitcoin should go into, you know, how Bitcoin should grow in the future. And anytime someone tries to exert influence over the Bitcoin network itself, again, like they've all failed. Like all of the attempts have tried to do that has spectacularly failed. But I guess in terms of trying to get influence in the Bitcoin space, I do think that, you know, if we are not careful, and like let's just say like this Bitcoin thing explodes and everyone adopts it, if Muslims are not at the forefront of this, guess who's going to be building these Bitcoin tools? It's not going to be us, and it's probably going to be the same people that were in control of the fiat system. So there is a risk if we do not build on Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin, because again, I cannot think of like what these things, like I cannot think how creative like Zionist bankers are and how they want to co-opt Bitcoin. There may be a certain attack vector I'm not considering, but what's going to happen if we don't build on Bitcoin? Other people are going to build on it for us.
So what does that look like, building on Bitcoin? Do you mean that if we don't start buying Bitcoin right now in mass, and therefore I think it's like what, 21 million, 22 million, that it's a finite currency
Yeah,
at 21? So if we have to control like 10 million of it, 12 million of it sooner rather than later, is that what you're trying to say?
So I think instead of trying to like control, so the neat thing about Bitcoin is that it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin really you own or you control. It's more so about like the tools that, because the only way people interact and interface with Bitcoin is through the tools, and whoever's building the tools kind of sets the stage for how Bitcoin is going to be used. So it doesn't, yeah, I mean, like as Muslims, we should be like trying to get off of the fiat monetary system that's completely riba-based and trying to accumulate Bitcoin. But also like we shouldn't just be trying to focus on just like accumulating just that Bitcoin, but also on building other apps, like things that we could build on, like zakat, I think is like a huge thing that's underutilized right now. You know, all of these zakat apps and all of these Islamic finance apps are all built on fiat rails. So like necessarily, of course, you're going to have Islamic finance products. The most popular Islamic finance products are basically just replications of the conventional finance products that are out now. All of the yield that you get from Islamic finance products are benchmarked to the interest rate on fiat money that you get. Zakat is all just built on fiat. I mean, it's like I think there's so much that we could be building. And again, I'm not like a developer, and so I don't know what the answer is. But I'm hoping that inshallah, like if more and more Muslims can join in, we can actually start building the tools that we need to break free out of the current fiat monetary system. In addition to also some of like all of us making I like to call it the financial hijrah, to like outside of the fiat monetary system into Bitcoin, where we're converting slowly, like not all at once. Like I highly don't recommend you go today and go clear out your bank account and go all in on Bitcoin. It's a process. You're going to put in 5%. You might put in 10%. You're going to look at it. You're going to be like, oh my God, the price is going up and down. What's going on? And you're going to read about it. You're going to read the Bitcoin Standard, some of the books that we'll pass out. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, this is like this thing is starting to make sense. You're going to allocate 15%, 20%. You're going to keep going until you're allocated 50% without even realizing it. And you're like, wow, okay, like I think I need to actually allocate more. I need to completely get myself outside of this depreciating, debasing fiat current monetary system that's completely based on riba.
Okay, so what you're saying is we have to found the tools. We have to be founders of the tools of transactions. For example, if you're going to a coffee shop, a Muslim should be the founder of a transaction tool where you can pay Bitcoin in that coffee shop, or zakat and so on. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's the way we should be approaching it. I mean, right now, there's nothing wrong with using like there's certain point of sale apps that are out now for like that are interfaced with the Lightning Network. But I think like just in general, we should be forward thinking and like not completely reliant on other people to build our tools, not reliant on other people to verify. Like, you know, that's one of the reasons why I personally run a node, and I run a Lightning node at home. And I have my wallets on my phone that are connected to my Lightning and Bitcoin node that are running at home, because you need to I feel like we should be like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us on this earth to be khalifas. Like one of the English translation I really like about for khalifa is vicegerent. Vicegerent, a lot of people use this term as like, oh, we need to be stewards of the earth. We need to take care of the earth. What about being stewards over the monetary system? Like that's just as valid. Like we should be sovereign. We should own our wealth, and we should be able to verify the supply of the monetary system that we're using and not rely on riba-based bankers. We should be vicegerents in this financial hijrah movement.
Okay, so a lot of Muslims and a lot of people actually in general invest based off where they believe the future is. Many Muslims today believe that the future is almost apocalyptic. One of the best ways you can go viral on YouTube is to make a video of the Mahdi, right? Or the Dajjal. So if there's many Muslims who believe or have a savior complex where the world we live in today, where we're constantly under attack, we need a savior, we need this one man to come, and that we're going to all return back to swords and horses. How do you convince someone with that mindset? And I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of that mindset, that the system right now is going to crash, isn't going to crash, and that we're not going to have where you see those American movies where like the apocalypse happens and the entire, grid system demolishes, right? So if non-Muslims control the grid systems, and these grid systems are the means in which we make transactions with Bitcoin, don't they still have ultimate control over our transactions? And I was told one more question, so I'm going to add another one on top of it. I believe your claim is, you told me before, that this is the most halal money ever invented. And I would love to hear how that is and how so over gold.
Yeah, so like answering the first question, I think yes, like there is an argument to be made that like it does rely on like the electrical grid or on the internet, like that's how Bitcoin operates. But it's weird, since I've started accumulating Bitcoin, and I've seen this with other Bitcoiners, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, they immediately, like not immediately, but gradually start having this very positive outlook, like very almost toxically optimistic outlook, despite like knowing all of the problems. Because once you start accumulating Bitcoin, you start being forward thinking. You start thinking about, you're not like chasing the dunya right now. You start thinking about your akhirah. Like for me personally, I started having a lot more kids when I started accumulating Bitcoin. I have five kids now. You wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to tell, but like I've started like, and I'm not just like having kids for fun. I'm thinking about the future. Like this, like when I like start accumulating Bitcoin, I can't help but think like, what is life going to be like in 20, 30, 40 years from now? What do I want to leave behind? What kind of future do I want to leave my kids? And I feel like that mindset would not have happened if I had not started accumulating Bitcoin. It's the weirdest thing. There's this concept called time preference, which you probably heard in different presentations, but it's basically the degree to which you discount the future. Fiat money naturally raises our time preference, which meaning that like we naturally discount the future. We're thinking more about consuming now rather than saving and consuming later.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying is that I was just listening to a sheikh the other day saying one of the reasons why the world is depressed and the Muslim ummah might be going through a civilizational depression is because we aren't realizing we're actually at war with Allah because of the interest that we're taking in. So maybe one of the things that your mindset change happen in is that you're no longer at war with Allah in a way by removing your money from fiat interest-based money.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the highlights of the talk this morning is like, I mean, if you look all around you and at the state of the ummah, and we're all plugged into the riba-based system, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us that specifically like in the Quran, if you're going to engage in riba, then be aware of a war from Allah and his messenger. Like it's no wonder that the ummah is in the state that it's in because we're all plugged into the riba-based system. And once you start taking steps to get outside of that system, there's going to be barakah in that. Like you're going to be blessed.
You're going to have more kids, huh?
You're going to have, inshallah, bi'ithnillah, you're going to have more kids. You're going to be thinking about the future. You're going to be doing events like this. You're going to be involved more with your masjid, and like your time preference is going to be lowered so much that you're going to be thinking more about your akhirah than the dunya. Like, isn't that what you're supposed to be doing anyway? Like that's just, to me, like the incentive is just so beautiful. Like when you're talking about Bitcoin being halal, that is the case for Bitcoin being halal, is that it lowers your time preference so much that you're thinking about the akhirah rather than the dunya. And I can't think of any incentive that's just more beautiful than that.
SubhanAllah, Bitcoin makes you a better Muslim. I didn't know this argument was going to be made ever. That's awesome. We're good? Okay, yeah. So, Brother Abdullah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you guys for listening.